For decades, PC gaming has been defined by a single inescapable reality. If you want to play the latest games, you use Windows. It didn't matter if Windows was bloated, we used it because we had to. Microsoft had no reason to innovate for gamers because frankly, where else were we going to go? But today, that era of complacency has ended. For the first time, Microsoft is looking over its shoulder, and they're looking directly at Valve. What started as a niche project for their own hardware, like the Steam Deck, has spiraled into a full-blown platform race, because Valve did the one thing Microsoft thought was impossible. They made Linux a viable, even preferable alternative for the average gamer. The pressure has finally reached a breaking point. Microsoft is rolling out massive initiatives, a complete performance overhaul known as Project K2, and the public launch of Xbox Mode. This is their desperate attempt to stop the bleeding and try to take back what they used to have. Today we're going to look at how Valve is finally making Microsoft work for your loyalty and why this competition is the best thing to happen to your PC. To understand why Microsoft is panicking, we have to look at what Windows had become. Just take a look at Windows 11 that's full of features that no one asked for. Every megabyte of RAM taken by a background process was a megabyte not used by your game. Every CPU cycle spent on Windows telemetry was a cycle not spent on frame timing. Valve saw this opening and continued to improve on it with SteamOS. This wasn't your standard Linux distro. They built a lean, gaming-first environment, but they didn't just stop at removing bloat. They started innovating at the kernel level, doing things Microsoft never bothered to do. Take for example the recent SteamOS performance breakthroughs. Valve implemented a revolutionary VRAM management update that specifically targeted 8GB cards and handhelds. The changes dramatically reduce stutters and reclaim over 1.3GB of VRAM for games in demanding titles, while also delivering major performance improvements on low VRAM hardware that most would otherwise recommend upgrading from. Games on SteamOS often have smoother frame delivery and fewer micro stutters than the same games running on Windows. They proved that with a tool like Proton, you could run Windows games on a Linux kernel with better efficiency and fewer distractions just due to their operating system not being full of bloat. So the SteamOS Effect wasn't just about the Steam Deck. It was really showing the world that Windows was a choice and not a requirement. And as Linux adoption began to climb, slowly at first, then rapidly as more handhelds and other distros started to use Valve's open source software, Microsoft realized their monopoly on the gaming PC was actually just a house of cards. The first half of Microsoft's response is Project K2. For months, we've heard of rumors of an internal Windows team tasked with de-bloating the operating system to match the efficiency of SteamOS. Those reports from Windows Central were just the tip of the iceberg, as K2 was a massive redesign of the Windows kernel's relationship with gaming. Microsoft has finally realized that more features isn't the way to win gamers back. Less noise is. The goal of K2 is to bring Windows down to a footprint that is identical to or even smaller than SteamOS. We're talking about a start menu that is reportedly 60% faster, a game mode that doesn't just prioritize the window, it actually puts background AI services into deep sleep state. Microsoft is finally realizing that when a game is running, the operating system should basically disappear. And this is a direct result of Valve. If Valve hadn't proven that Linux-based operating systems could deliver smoother frame times and better battery life on the same hardware, Microsoft would still be trying to sell us Copilot for gamers. Instead, they're being forced to do the hard work of optimizing their code. While K2 handles the under-the-hood performance, the second half of today's rollout is the Xbox Mode. This is the most visible sign that Microsoft is scared. Starting today, April 30th, 2026, Windows 11 users are getting an official system-wide Xbox Mode. This is a full-screen controller-optimized UI that replaces the desktop experience entirely when you want it to. Think about Steam's Big Picture mode or the Steam Deck's Gaming mode. It's a seamless, immersive way to browse your library without ever touching a mouse or keyboard. Xbox Mode is marketed to mimic the console experience, minimizing background distractions and prioritizing quick resume functionality. Essentially, Xbox just saw Steam's Big Picture mode and thought they should to get their own. So you might be wondering, how do they actually stack up today? This is where the competition gets interesting for us consumers. On one side you have SteamOS. It's built on Linux, meaning it has zero legacy Windows bloat. It's incredibly efficient, but it relies on Proton to translate Windows games. While Proton is great, there are still some games, mainly those with aggressive kernel-level anti-cheats, that just won't run. On the other side you have Windows and their new Xbox mode. Because it's Windows, you will have that inherent game compatibility. But even with the potential K2 optimizations, it's still sitting on top of a much heavier foundation than Linux. But it's a clear sign Microsoft is trying to regain ground against Valve. For decades, the year of the Linux desktop was a running joke in the tech industry. It was always coming soon, but it never actually happened. Then Valve released the Steam Deck, and suddenly millions of people were using Linux without even realizing it. According to the latest Steam hardware survey, Linux usage has been on a steady, undeniable rise. It's a legitimate market share of now 5% this month. Microsoft doesn't just make money from Windows licenses, they make money from their overall ecosystem. They want you in their store, using their services, and feeding their telemetry. If gamers, which some say are the most demanding and influential power users on the planet, start moving to Linux, the developers follow, and if the developers follow, then the cycle continues. Valve has successfully demystified Linux. They've shown that it can be just as user-friendly as a console. Microsoft knows that if they don't make Windows better than Linux for gaming, they lose a chunk of their consumer business. That is why K2 is so aggressive, and why they are stripping out the very features they spent years putting in. They are realizing that the privacy and performance are actually competitive advantages that Valve is using against them. While the narrative today is actually about the software, we can't ignore what's happening in Valve's warehouses. Hardware analyst Brad Lynch has been tracking a massive surge in shipments hitting Valve's US centers. We're seeing entries for game console in quantities that far exceed a standard Steam Deck restock. Brad's been vocal about this on X, noting that the volume and frequency look much more like they are related to the Steam machine or even the Steam frame, but some could still be some Steam Decks. And while we know the new Steam controller is officially releasing in just a few days on May 4th for $99, Valve is preparing to move into the living room, which is Microsoft's home turf. Microsoft knows that if Valve drops a Steam machine that is faster, quieter, and simpler to use than a Windows PC, people will buy it. And when they buy it, they'll be using SteamOS. Every Steam machine sold is a Windows license lost. Microsoft has to make Windows better now, because if they wait until the Steam machine is in every living room, that will be too late. For the last 10 years, Microsoft hasn't had to try. When a company has a monopoly, the consumer loses. We got a start menu filled with Candy Crush and TikTok ads. We got a search bar that couldn't find a file on our hard drive, but Valve changed that. Because of Valve, Microsoft is finally optimizing performance, improving their UI, and respecting your hardware. This is the power of competition. Whether you love Valve or you're a die-hard Xbox fan, you are benefiting from this. One thing is clear, the balance of power has shifted. Microsoft can no longer afford to treat PC gaming as an afterthought. Valve has proven that gamers value performance, simplicity, and openness above all else. The SteamOS Effect has done more for Windows in 2 years than Microsoft has done in 20. And as those new game console shipments continue to arrive in Valve's warehouses, the pressure is only going to increase from here. Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on everything you will want to know about PC gaming.